The scream tore through Magnolia Plantation at 2:23 in the morning on December 14th, 1842. Rebecca Thornton bolted upright with her heart hammering. The sound came again, high and ragged, a woman's voice rising in waves of agony. Rebecca ran to her window. The east wing glowed with lamplight. Shadows moved behind curtains. Then another scream cut through the December cold. She had lived at Magnolia her entire 17 years. She knew every sound this house made, but she had never heard anything like this. It sounded like someone being torn apart from the inside. She grabbed her robe and moved into the hallway. The house was silent except for those terrible cries. Where was her father? Why was nobody responding? The grandfather clock showed 2:30. The screaming had stopped. That felt worse. Rebecca stood in the darkness, deciding what to do. The east wing had been locked her entire life. Her father, Charles Thornton, kept the only key. Storage space, he had said. Plantation records. Nothing interesting. But storage rooms did not have lit lamps at 2 in the morning. Storage rooms did not scream. She moved toward the east wing. The heavy oak door at the corridor's end stood open, just an inch. Lamplight bled through. She heard voices. Her father. Another man she did not recognize. She put her eye to the gap. What she saw made her stop breathing. 14 beds in 2 rows, every bed occupied by a pregnant black woman. Some looked ready to deliver, others earlier in their terms, ages 15 to 30, most lying down. Several had chains attached to iron rings bolted into the floor. One chain had fresh bloodstains where metal had rubbed skin raw to exposed flesh. The air smelled thick, blood and sweat and fear. Rebecca had never smelled fear before, but she recognized it instantly. The scent of bodies that had given up hope. At the far end, a white man in a bloody apron stood beside a bed. The woman there was in final labor. Legs in stirrups, hands gripping the bed frame, a leather strap between her teeth. Dr. Samuel Pierce, the plantation physician, a man who had treated Rebecca for scarlet fever when she was 9. She watched him work with practiced efficiency. The baby came 3 minutes later. It cried, a thin wail. But instead of giving it to the mother, Dr. Pierce carried it to a table across the room, cut the cord, wrapped it in white cloth, placed it in a wooden basket. The mother tried to sit up. The woman beside her pushed her back down. You cannot. It is already gone. Hush now, the mother cried, soft, broken sobs. Dr. Pierce washed his hands in water that turned pink, walked to where Charles Thornton stood watching. They spoke quietly. Healthy male, light skin, top price in Charleston, 8 pounds, strong lungs. Good. How is she? She will survive. Her 4th. Another year, and we breed her again. Maybe 3 more before her value drops. Rebecca's vision swam. Breed her again, like livestock, like a machine designed to produce humans for sale. She looked at the woman on the bed, young, maybe 22, eyes open but empty, staring at nothing. One of the other pregnant women had been watching. She caught Rebecca's eye through the gap. Her lips moved. No sound, just the shape of a name. Sarah. Then one word whispered so quietly. Please. Her hand moved to her lips, extended toward Rebecca. Help us. Please. Rebecca stumbled backward, made it halfway down the corridor before her legs gave out. She collapsed and vomited. Her mind could not process this, could not reconcile the father she knew with the man discussing sale prices like evaluating tobacco. She heard footsteps, heavy boots. She looked up. Charles Thornton stood 10 feet away, face unreadable. He looked at her, at the vomit, back at her. You should not have seen that. Come with me. He took her arm, led her to his study, closed the door, poured brandy, sat in his leather chair with that same calculating expression. What is that place? What are you doing to those women? What you saw is something I hope to keep from you longer. But since you have seen it, we discuss it openly. They are chained, pregnant. You are selling their babies. I am running a business, a very profitable one that keeps this plantation solvent, one that paid for everything you own. How can you call that business? Let me explain. A good field hand costs $600 at auction. A newborn infant sells for $400 to $600 depending on complexion. If you purchase a young woman for $800 and she produces one child per year for 10 years, how much profit is that? You are calculating humans like crops. I am calculating property. That is what they are under the law. I purchased every woman in that room legally. They receive medical care, good food, clean quarters. You are breeding them like animals. I am managing assets efficiently. Every plantation does this. I simply focus on infant production over cotton. Cotton prices fluctuate, but demand for young slaves never decreases. Infants sold separate from mothers fetch higher prices. Buyers raise them from birth. No resistance. Clean slates. How long have you done this? 3 years. Since 1839. Started with 6 women. Now 14. Last year we produced 28 births. 26 survived. That survival rate is far higher than most operations. Most operations? There are others? Of course. The Beaufort place in Louisiana runs 30 women. Madison in Alabama has 22. This is not unusual, Rebecca. This is business. What happens to the women after birth? They recover 6 to 8 weeks. Then bred again. Most sustain 5 to 8 pregnancies over 10 years. After that, we sell them to cotton plantations. Still have value as field labor. And the babies? Sold within 2 to 3 weeks. Long enough to establish health, but not long enough for bonding. Bonding reduces value. Buyers do not want crying children. Rebecca stared. She had known they owned slaves, but never thought about the mechanics, never asked where they came from. Now she knew. From rooms like upstairs, from women chained to beds, from babies torn from mothers before first nursing. Before we continue this story, I need to ask something. Where are you watching from right now? What city? What time is it there? Drop your location in the comments. We love knowing where our community watches from. And if you want the darkest American history secrets that never made textbooks, subscribe and turn on notifications. What you are about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about the antebellum South. This is economic reality, Rebecca. I did not create this system. I operate within it. Every luxury you enjoyed exists because of this plantation. Every book you read, every dress you own, all purchased with profits from human property. You benefited your entire life. The only difference now is you know the mechanics. I did not ask for this. I did not know. But now you know. So you choose. Accept reality and continue enjoying the life it provides, or reject it and face consequences. What consequences? If you speak publicly, you destroy this family. Our name, reputation, business, everything. And for what? To save women who are legal property? Who would simply be sold to someone else? You sacrifice everything and accomplish nothing. I want to go to my room. Of course. But Rebecca, if you speak to anyone about this, there will be consequences. Understand? She understood. She went to her room, did not sleep, sat at her writing desk as the sun rose and began to write. 14 beds, 14 pregnant women, chains with bloodstains, a woman named Sarah begging with her eyes, Dr. Pierce in his bloody apron, her father's cold voice, the baby in the basket, the iron rings, the smell of fear. She wrote it all down. If she did not record it immediately, she would doubt her memory. Convince herself maybe it was not that bad. Maybe her father was right, but she knew she was not overreacting. Women used as breeding stock, babies stolen and sold, humans reduced to production units in an economic equation. She finished as the breakfast bell rang, folded the pages, hid them at the bottom of her jewelry box beneath ribbons and a silver locket, then went downstairs and ate breakfast with her father like nothing happened. He smiled, asked about her day, said he was riding to Natchez, would be back by dinner. He acted like their conversation never occurred, like the screaming woman did not exist, like the newborn baby being prepared for Charleston was just another ledger line. Rebecca smiled back, said she planned to read and practice piano. Inside her mind, she made a decision. She would keep writing, document everything, every woman brought to that wing, every pregnancy, every birth, every stolen baby. Create a record that could not be denied. And someday, somehow, make sure the world knew what happened in this house. Not today, not while 17 and powerless, but someday. She would wait, watch, learn, and when the right moment came, use everything documented to burn the system down, even if it meant destroying her own family, even if it meant sacrificing everything she knew. She went back to her room, read the pages, made sure every detail was accurate, hid them again, went to the window. From the second floor she could see the east wing, curtains drawn now, no light, no sound. But she knew what was behind those walls. 14 women, 14 swollen bellies, 14 lives reduced to reproductive capacity. And somewhere in that house, a newborn baby being fed sugar water to keep it quiet. A baby who would be sold to Charleston strangers within 2 weeks. Who would grow up never knowing its mother's name, never understanding it was not born into love, but into profit. That its entire life had been decided before first breath by men drinking brandy and discussing sale prices like negotiating livestock. Rebecca turned from the window, sat at her desk, and began to write again. Rebecca did not leave her room for 3 days. She told the house servants she was ill with a headache. They brought food on trays. She barely touched it. Instead, she sat at her desk and wrote, page after page after page, every detail she could remember, every word her father had said, every image burned into her mind, the woman named Sarah, the blood-stained chain, the baby in the basket, Dr. Pierce's bloody apron, the leather strap between clenched teeth. On the 4th day, her father knocked on her door. "We need to talk." She let him in. He sat in the chair by her window, looked at her with an expression she could not read. "You have been avoiding me. I have been ill. You have been thinking. That is different. Have you made your decision? What decision? Whether you accept reality or fight it. Whether you remain part of this family or destroy it." Rebecca said nothing. Charles stood, walked to the door, stopped. "Tomorrow night there will be another delivery. You should see the full operation, understand how it works. Knowledge is better than ignorance. Ignorance breeds foolish ideas." He left. Rebecca sat frozen. Another delivery, another birth, or something worse? She did not know, but she knew she would go. She had to see, had to document, had to understand the full scope of what was happening in this house. The next night, Rebecca waited until she heard movement in the east wing. 11:43 by her bedside clock. She wrapped herself in a dark cloak and moved through the house like a shadow. The east wing door stood open this time. Her father expected her. She went inside. The room looked different now, brighter, more lamps burning. All 14 women were awake, sitting up in their beds, watching the door. They knew something was about to happen. Rebecca saw Sarah immediately, the woman who had begged for help with her eyes. Sarah's belly was still swollen, but less than before. She had given birth 4 days ago, her 4th child. Now she sat on her bed, staring at nothing, eyes completely empty. Rebecca's father stood near a table at the room's center, Dr. Pierce beside him, and 2 men Rebecca had never seen before, white men in expensive coats, buyers. Charles saw her enter, gestured for her to stand in the corner. Watch, learn. The door opened again. 2 overseers entered, leading a young black woman between them. She could not have been more than 16, heavily pregnant, wrists bound with rope. She was crying. Please, please do not do this. I will work harder. I will do anything. Just let me keep my baby. Please. One of the overseers pushed her toward the table. Charles opened a leather ledger, wrote something, looked up at the buyers. Arrived yesterday from the Richards Plantation in Louisiana. 19 years old according to records, though she appears younger. First pregnancy. 7 months along. Purchased for $520. Projected infant value $400 minimum. Likely higher given her complexion and youth. One of the buyers stepped forward, examined the woman like she was livestock, pulled her lips back to check her teeth, pressed his hands against her belly, feeling for the child inside. The woman tried to pull away. The overseer grabbed her arm, held her still. Acceptable. When is delivery expected? 8 to 10 weeks. She will remain here until birth. You can collect the infant 3 weeks after. We guarantee survival to that point or full refund. The second buyer spoke. And her? After delivery? Returned to field labor or sold separately? Your choice. She should recover well. Young bodies heal fast. I will take her as well. Good breeding stock. If this first child is quality, I want her for future production. Excellent. That will be an additional $400. The buyer nodded. The overseer led the woman to an empty bed, chained her ankle to the floor. She collapsed onto the mattress, sobbing. The other pregnant women watched in silence. They had all been through this. They all knew what was coming. Rebecca felt her stomach turn. This was not just about the babies already born. This was about creating a constant supply. A factory, women purchased specifically for breeding, kept pregnant continuously, their children sold before they could bond, then bred again and again until their bodies gave out. This was systematic, industrial, a machine designed to turn human reproduction into profit. Charles turned to Rebecca, gestured for her to come closer. She did not want to, forced herself to move. Stood beside her father at the table. He opened the ledger, showed her pages filled with careful handwriting. We keep detailed records. Every woman, every pregnancy, every birth, dates, weights, complications, survival rates, sale prices. This is how you run an efficient operation. Rebecca looked at the pages, saw names. Mary, age 21, 4 pregnancies, 3 live births, 1 stillborn. Total revenue, $1,800. Cost of acquisition, $600. Net profit, $1,200. Dinah, age 19, 2 pregnancies, 2 live births. Total revenue, $900. Cost $450. Net profit, $450. Expected future production, 6 more children over 8 years. Projected total profit, $3,000. Sarah, age 22, 4 pregnancies, 4 live births. Total revenue $2,300. Cost $700. Net profit $1,600. Current status recovering. Next breeding scheduled April 1843. Rebecca's hand shook. Her father noticed. Closed the ledger. This disturbs you? Why? These are just numbers. Economics. You read financial records for the cotton operation without distress. How is this different? These are people, not cotton. Under the law, they are property. We have discussed this. The law does not make it moral. Morality does not pay bills. Morality does not keep a plantation running. Morality does not provide the life you have enjoyed since birth. One of the buyers interrupted. Is there a problem? No. My daughter is learning the business. She has questions. Natural for someone new to this. Charles turned back to Rebecca. If you want to ask questions, ask. I promised you knowledge. Rebecca looked at the young woman now chained to the bed, still crying softly. Looked at Sarah's empty eyes. Looked at the other women. Saw different stages of pregnancy, different levels of despair. Some looked broken. Some looked angry. Some looked like they had gone somewhere deep inside themselves where the outside world could not reach. How many? In total, how many children have been born in this room? Since 1839? 47. 41 survived past 3 weeks. 6 died. Infant mortality is always a risk. We have improved our survival rate significantly. Dr. Pierce has been studying techniques. Dr. Pierce spoke for the first time. Proper nutrition for the mothers during pregnancy. Clean conditions. Immediate medical attention at birth. These factors reduce mortality substantially. We are approaching an 88% survival rate. That is exceptional for any operation. Rebecca felt dizzy. 47 babies. 41 sold. 6 dead. Numbers in a ledger. Products on a balance sheet. And somewhere out there, 41 children growing up never knowing their mothers, never understanding where they came from, raised by people who had purchased them like furniture. She looked at her father, at Dr. Pierce, at the buyers examining another pregnant woman, at the overseers standing guard. All of them complicit. All of them participants in a system so monstrous she could barely comprehend it. And they acted like it was normal, like this was just business, just economics, just the way things worked. One of the women was watching Rebecca, not Sarah, a different woman, younger, maybe 18, her belly huge with late pregnancy. She caught Rebecca's eye, held it, then did something unexpected. She smiled, not a happy smile, a knowing smile, a smile that said, I see you. I see that you understand this is wrong. I see that you are horrified. Good. Remember this. Remember us. Rebecca left the room, walked back to her quarters, didn't run, didn't cry, just walked with mechanical precision. Closed her door, locked it, sat at her desk, opened her jewelry box, took out the hidden pages, added new pages, wrote everything she had just witnessed. The young woman bought specifically for breeding, the buyers inspecting her like livestock, the ledger with its careful accounting, 47 babies, the smile from the pregnant woman, the way Charles had explained it all like teaching a business lesson. She wrote until her hand cramped, until dawn light came through her window, until she heard servants moving in the house below. Then she hid the pages again, lay down on her bed fully clothed, stared at the ceiling. She understood now. This was not just a crime. This was not just cruelty. This was a system, a carefully designed operation that treated human reproduction as manufacturing, that turned women into production units and babies into inventory. That operated with the efficiency of a cotton gin or a tobacco press. That kept detailed records and calculated profit margins and projected future earnings based on how many more times a woman's body could survive pregnancy. And it was legal, every part of it, the purchases, the chains, the forced pregnancies, the sale of infants, all of it protected by law, all of it accepted by society. Her father was not a criminal. He was a businessman, a successful one. Other plantations were doing the same thing. The buyers came from respectable families. Dr. Pierce was a respected physician. Nobody would be punished. Nobody would be stopped. Because under the law, these women were property. Their children were property. And property could be bought and sold and used however the owner saw fit. Rebecca got up, went to her window, looked out at Magnolia Plantation, beautiful grounds, ancient oaks, well-maintained buildings, everything looking peaceful and normal in the morning light. And hidden in the east wing, 14 women chained to beds, pregnant, waiting, knowing their babies would be taken, knowing there was nothing they could do to stop it, knowing this would happen again and again until their bodies broke or they were sold away. She made a decision that morning. She would document everything. But documentation was not enough. She needed to find a way to stop this, not just at Magnolia. Everywhere it was happening. She did not know how yet, did not know who would help her. But she would find a way. She had to. She opened her jewelry box again, took out a fresh sheet of paper. At the top, she wrote one word: evidence. Then, underneath, everything that follows is true. Everything that follows happened. And when the time comes, this record will prove that we knew, that we saw, that we did nothing, or that we tried to do something. She began to write again, this time not just documenting, planning, thinking ahead. Who could help? Who would believe her? The law would not help. Society would not help. But maybe someone outside Mississippi, someone in the North, someone who opposed slavery already, someone who could use this information to expose not just her father, but the entire system. It would take time. She was 17. She had no money of her own, no connections, no power. But she had knowledge, she had evidence, and she had something her father did not have. She had rage, rage that burned cold and patient, rage that would wait years if necessary, rage that would not forget those women's faces, Sarah's empty eyes, the young woman's knowing smile, the one chained to the bed last night crying, "Please, please, please." Rebecca would wait, but she would not forgive. And someday, somehow, she would make sure the world knew what happened in the breeding quarters of Magnolia Plantation, even if it destroyed her in the process. 6 weeks after Rebecca discovered the breeding quarters, she woke to screaming again. But this time it was different, not the rhythmic cries of labor. Something wrong, something desperate. She ran to the east wing without thinking. The door stood wide open. Inside, chaos. Dr. Pierce bent over one of the beds. Blood everywhere. Too much blood. The woman on the bed was Mary, the one from the ledger. Aged 21, 4 pregnancies. The one whose projected earnings had been calculated at $3,000 over 8 years. Now she was dying. Rebecca stood frozen in the doorway. Mary's eyes were open but unfocused. Her skin had gone gray. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Dr. Pierce worked with frantic hands trying to stop the bleeding. But there was too much. It soaked through the sheets, dripped onto the floor, pooled beneath the bed. Sarah sat on the bed beside Mary's, chains keeping her in place, watching. Her face showed no emotion, just that same empty expression Rebecca had seen before. The woman who had begged for help with her eyes now looked like she had gone somewhere else entirely, somewhere the horror could not reach her any more. Mary died 7 minutes after Rebecca arrived. Just stopped breathing. Dr. Pierce stepped back from the bed, wiped his hands on a cloth already soaked red. Charles Thornton entered the room, looked at the body, at the blood, at Pierce. His voice was cold. What happened? Complications from the last birth 4 months ago. Internal damage that did not heal properly. When we bred her again last month, the pregnancy stressed the weakened tissue. Rupture. Nothing could be done once it started. How far along was she? 8 weeks. Too early for the infant to survive. Charles walked to his ledger on the table, opened it, found Mary's page, drew a single line through her name, wrote something in the margin, then closed the book. Total loss. Both the woman and the potential child. That is, $700 of property destroyed, plus projected future earnings of approximately $2,400. This is unacceptable, Pierce. I warned you last time. Her body was not ready. You insisted on maintaining the breeding schedule. Because idle property generates no return. You assured me she would recover. I said she might recover. Medical assessments are not guarantees. They argued over money while Mary's body cooled on the blood-soaked bed. Rebecca felt something crack inside her chest. Not rage this time. Something colder. Something that felt like her humanity breaking into pieces that would never fit back together the same way. 2 overseers entered. Charles gestured at Mary's corpse. Remove this, bury it in the usual place. Clean the bed. We need it available for the next acquisition. There is a sale in Natchez next week. We need to replace this loss quickly. The overseers wrapped Mary's body in the bloody sheet, carried it out like garbage. Rebecca watched them go, watched the trail of blood they left on the floor. Watched Charles turn to examine the other pregnant women like he was inspecting livestock after a barn accident, making sure the rest of the inventory was undamaged. One of the women started crying, quietly, not Mary's neighbor, a different one, younger, maybe 17, her belly huge with late pregnancy. The sound was soft, but in the silence after Mary's death, it seemed loud. Charles looked at her. Stop that noise. She could not stop. The crying continued, soft, broken sobs. I said, stop. The woman tried, put her hand over her mouth. But the sounds kept coming. Charles walked to the corner, picked up a leather strap, the same kind they put between women's teeth during labor. He walked to the crying woman's bed. If you cannot control yourself, I will control you. He struck her once across the face. The sound cracked through the room. The woman gasped. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. The crying stopped. Charles dropped the strap on her bed. This is a place of business, not a place for emotional displays. You will conduct yourselves appropriately, or there will be consequences. Am I understood? The pregnant woman nodded. Blood ran down her chin. She did not wipe it away, just sat there staring at nothing. Like Sarah, like all of them eventually. Broken into silence, Rebecca found her voice. You hit a pregnant woman. Charles turned to look at her like he had forgotten she was there. She was disrupting operations. Crying serves no purpose. It upsets the others and makes management more difficult. She is 17 years old, and she just watched someone die in front of her. She is property. Property does not have emotional needs that supersede operational efficiency. She is a human being. Under the law, she is a slave. And slaves are property. We have discussed this, Rebecca. I thought you understood. I understand perfectly. You value money more than human life. I value maintaining a profitable operation. Mary's death was unfortunate, but these things happen. We will absorb the loss and move forward. That is how business works. This is not business. This is murder." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Charles stared at Rebecca. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. "That is an extreme accusation. You bred her knowing her body was damaged. Pierce said he warned you. You prioritized profit over her survival. What would you call that? Risk management. Every business operation involves acceptable levels of loss. We calculated the risk and determined the potential return justified proceeding. The fact that the outcome was negative does not make the decision wrong. It simply means this particular investment failed." She was not an investment. She was a person named Mary who had 4 children stolen from her and then died bleeding out on a mattress while you calculated your financial losses. Charles walked to Rebecca, stood very close. His voice dropped even lower. "You will leave this room. You will go to your quarters. You will remain there until I say otherwise, and you will never speak to me like that again. Is that clear? Or what? You will lock me in a room like them? Chain me to a bed? You are my daughter. You will show respect. I am your daughter who just watched you hit a pregnant teenager for crying. I think I have seen enough of what you believe deserves respect." Charles raised his hand. For a moment Rebecca thought he would strike her like he had struck the crying woman. She did not move, did not flinch, just stared at him, daring him. His hand lowered. "Get out." Rebecca left, but she did not go to her room. She went to the kitchen, found the head cook, an older black woman named Martha, who had worked at Magnolia longer than Rebecca had been alive. Martha took one look at Rebecca's face and knew something had happened. "Miss Rebecca, you look like you've seen a ghost. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Martha glanced at the doorway, lowered her voice. "That depends on what you're asking. The women in the East Wing, the pregnant ones. Do you know what happens to them?" Martha's expression closed like a door slamming shut. "I do not know nothing about that. Please, I am not trying to get you in trouble. I just need to know if anyone else understands what is happening there." Martha was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke so softly, Rebecca had to lean in to hear. "We all know. Every slave on this plantation knows. We've been knowing since it started. We see the women brought in. We hear the crying. We see the babies carried away. We clean the blood after. We bury the ones who do not survive. We know. Why does nobody do anything? What would we do? We are property too. We have no rights, no voice. If we speak against master, we get sold, or worse. Best we can do is survive. Maybe help where we can. Sneak extra food. Whisper prayers. Try to give them small comforts. But we cannot stop it. Nobody can stop it. Someone has to. Not us, Miss Rebecca. Maybe someone from outside. Maybe someone with power, but not slaves. We have no power here." Rebecca went to her room, sat at her desk, took out her hidden documentation, added new pages, wrote everything about Mary's death, the blood, the arguing over money, Charles striking the pregnant girl, the way he had drawn a line through Mary's name, like erasing a mistake in accounting. Then she wrote something else, a plan, not complete yet, not detailed, but the beginning of an idea. Martha was right. Slaves could not stop this. People inside Mississippi would not stop this because it was legal and profitable. But outside Mississippi, there were people who opposed slavery, abolitionists, people who published newspapers exposing atrocities, people who might listen if someone gave them evidence. Rebecca did not know how to reach these people. did not know their names or where they lived. But she would find out. She was 17 now. In 3 years, she would be 20. Old enough that maybe she could leave Mississippi without her father's permission. Old enough to travel north. Old enough to carry her documentation to people who would believe her. 3 years felt like forever. But she would wait. She would document everything that happened in those 3 years. Every birth, every death, every cruelty. And when the time came, she would use that evidence to expose not just her father, but every plantation running breeding operations. She would find a way to make the world see what was happening behind locked doors in the supposedly civilized South. She heard footsteps in the hallway, her father's heavy tread. He knocked once, entered without waiting for permission, stood in her doorway, looking at her with an expression she could not read. You cannot leave this house. You cannot write letters. You cannot speak to anyone outside the family about what you have seen. I will be watching you, Rebecca. If you attempt to communicate anything about the operation to outsiders, there will be consequences for you and for anyone who helps you. You cannot keep me prisoner forever. I can keep you contained until you marry. I have already begun discussions with appropriate families. You will be engaged within 6 months, married within a year. Your husband will be someone who understands the economics of plantation management, someone who will not tolerate foolish idealism. You're selling me, too, just like them. I am ensuring you make a suitable match. That is what fathers do. He left. Rebecca sat in silence. Her father was right about one thing. She was trapped. He controlled her money, her movement, her future. He could force her into a marriage that would continue her captivity, could ensure she never escaped to tell what she knew, unless she found another way. She went to her window, looked out at the plantation grounds, beautiful and horrible all at once. Somewhere out there was Mary's grave, unmarked probably, just another body in the woods. 4 children growing up somewhere, never knowing their mother was dead, never knowing she had tried to survive, never knowing she had existed at all beyond the 9 months each of them had spent in her womb before being torn away. Rebecca made a decision. 3 years was too long. She would not wait. She would find a way to act now, even if it meant destroying herself in the process. Because staying silent made her complicit, made her part of the machine, made her no different from her father calculating losses in a ledger while women bled to death on blood-soaked beds. She opened her jewelry box, took out all the documentation she had written. Read through it. 50 pages now. Names, dates, descriptions, numbers, evidence that could not be denied if it reached the right people. She folded the pages carefully, hid them in a different place, not the jewelry box anymore. Somewhere her father would never think to look. Inside the lining of her winter coat. A coat she would not need until next December. A coat nobody would touch until cold weather came. And then she began planning. Not for 3 years from now, for 3 months from now, for the moment when she could slip away. Take her evidence. Find someone who would listen, someone who would help her burn this entire system to the ground, even if it meant she could never come home, even if it meant her father would never forgive her, even if it meant dying in the attempt, because Mary had died for profit. And Rebecca would not let that death be meaningless, would not let the 47 babies be forgotten, would not let the women chained in the East Wing disappear into history without anyone knowing they had existed. She would tell their story, or she would die trying. 3 months felt like 3 years. Rebecca watched, documented, waited for the right moment. It came on a cold March night in 1843 when her father left for New Orleans on business. He would be gone 5 days. 5 days when the oversight at Magnolia would be lighter. 5 days when Rebecca could move. She had made contact 2 weeks earlier through Martha. Not direct contact, but a message passed through the slave network. A name. Thomas Way Slay, an abolitionist living in Memphis, Tennessee. A man who published a newspaper exposing slavery's brutalities. A man who might listen if someone brought him evidence. The plan was simple. Steal a horse, ride north, reach Memphis before her father discovered she was gone. Give Wesley the documentation. Let him publish it. Even if Charles caught her afterward, the information would be public. The system would be exposed. But Rebecca underestimated one thing. Her father had left instructions. She discovered this when she tried to leave her room the night after he departed. The door was locked from the outside. She pounded on it, called for help. Martha's voice came through the wood. "Miss Rebecca, your father left orders. You are to remain in your room until he returns." "Martha, please, I need to leave. People are dying in that east wing." "I know, but if I let you out, Master will have me whipped. Maybe worse. I cannot help you." Rebecca heard Martha's footsteps retreat down the hallway. She was trapped, 5 days locked in her room while women suffered 20 feet away, while babies were born and stolen, while the machine continued operating without pause. She spent 2 days trying to break the lock. Failed. The door was solid oak with iron reinforcements. On the 3rd day, she heard screaming from the east wing again. Not labor this time, something else. Argument, shouting, then a crash. Rebecca went to her window. Smoke, coming from the east wing. Fire, she screamed, pounded on her door. Nobody came. The smoke grew thicker. She could hear chaos below. People running, shouting. The smell of burning wood filled her room. She grabbed her winter coat, the one with documentation hidden in the lining, wrapped it around her face to filter the smoke. Went back to the window. The drop was 15 feet. She would break something if she jumped. But the alternative was burning alive. She threw her jewelry box out first, heard it shatter on the ground. Then she climbed onto the windowsill, hands shaking, smoke pouring into her room now. She jumped, hit the ground hard, left ankle twisted. Pain shot up her leg, but she could move. She grabbed what she could from the shattered jewelry box. Some pages survived, others scattered in the wind. She stuffed them inside her coat, limped toward the east wing. The fire had started in the breeding quarters. Rebecca could see flames through windows, hear screaming inside, women chained to beds, unable to escape. She ran toward the entrance. An overseer tried to stop her. "Miss Thornton, you cannot go in there. The whole wing is collapsing. There are 14 women chained inside. We have to get them out. They are just slaves, not worth dying for." Rebecca shoved past him, burst through the door into hell. Smoke so thick she could barely see, flames consuming one wall. The heat was incredible. She moved by memory toward where the beds were. Found Sarah first, still chained, coughing, trying to breathe through smoke. Rebecca grabbed the chain, tried to break it, could not. Looked around desperate, saw keys hanging on the wall near Dr. Pierce's table. Ran through flames, grabbed them, ran back, unlocked Sarah's chain. "Go, get out, now." Sarah stumbled toward the door. Rebecca moved to the next bed. The young woman, the one Charles had struck for crying. She was unconscious, smoke inhalation. Rebecca unlocked her chain, tried to lift her, could not. The woman was dead weight. Rebecca dragged her inch by inch toward the door, her twisted ankles screaming, lungs burning, got her outside, went back in. The smoke was worse. She could not see, could not breathe. Found another woman by touch. unlocked the chain, pointed her toward where the door should be, went back in again. She saved 7 out of 14. The other 7 were deeper in the room where the fire was worst. The ceiling collapsed before Rebecca could reach them. She heard their screams cut off suddenly as burning timber buried them. She tried to go back in. Strong hands grabbed her, pulled her away. Martha, holding her. "You cannot save them. They are gone. You will die if you go back in. But they are still alive. I can hear them. No, that is just the fire. They are gone, Miss Rebecca." They watch the east wing collapse, flames reaching into the night sky. Rebecca stood there, covered in soot and blood. 7 women huddled nearby. 7 survivors. 7 failures. The fire spread to the main house. Servants tried to fight it, but the flames moved too fast. By dawn, Magnolia Plantation was ruins. The manor house destroyed, the east wing completely gone, and in the wreckage, buried under burned timber, the bodies of 7 pregnant women who had died chained to beds. Charles Thornton returned from New Orleans 3 days later, arrived to find his plantation burned to ashes, his breeding operation destroyed, his daughter missing. Rebecca had taken the 7 freed women and disappeared into the slave network. Martha had helped them, given them food, directions, contacts. They reached Memphis 2 weeks later, found Thomas Wesley. Rebecca gave him everything, the documentation she had saved, her testimony, the 7 women's stories. Wesley listened, took notes, published it all. The article appeared in his newspaper, April 1843. 14 pregnant women chained in secret rooms, babies stolen at birth, an industrial breeding operation designed to maximize profit. Names, dates, numbers, everything Rebecca had documented. The South called it lies, abolitionist propaganda. Charles Thornton denied everything, claimed Rebecca was mentally unstable, claimed the women were making up stories for Northern sympathy, claimed the fire had destroyed all potential evidence. But the article spread. Other newspapers picked it up. Northern readers were horrified. The image of pregnant women chained to beds dying in a fire became a symbol. Magnolia became known. The breeding quarters became infamous. Rebecca became both hero and traitor, depending on who told the story. She never went home. Charles disowned her publicly, married her in absentia to a distant cousin to protect the family name. She lived in Memphis, worked with abolitionists, continued documenting slavery's atrocities. Married Thomas Wesley in 1846. They had no children. She said she could not bring children into a world where some children were property. The 7 women she saved went north, settled in different cities. Some married, some had children, some worked, some struggled. But they were free, and they never forgot the girl who broke their chains while fire consumed the building around them. Rebecca died in 1887, age 62. Her obituary in Northern papers called her a hero. Her obituary in Mississippi papers did not exist. Charles Thornton rebuilt Magnolia. Died in 1863. Heart failure. Left everything to the distant cousin who had married Rebecca in her absence. The breeding quarters were never rebuilt. That section of ground remained empty. Locals said it was cursed, said they heard crying at night, said the land would not grow anything, would not support structures, just remained bare earth where nothing would take root. In 1998, archaeologists excavating the old Magnolia site found something. A mass grave in the woods behind where the east wing had stood. 19 skeletons, all female, ages 15 to 30 based on bone analysis. Many showed signs of multiple pregnancies. Some had chains still attached to their bones. In 2015, a more thorough excavation uncovered an additional 54 burials, mostly infants. Carbon dating placed them between 1839 and 1843. DNA analysis showed multiple shared genetic markers suggesting many of the infants were siblings born to the same mothers. Researchers cross-referenced their findings with Rebecca's documentation, which had been preserved in abolitionist archives. Names matched, dates matched. Mary, age 21, 4 pregnancies. Her bones showed trauma consistent with death from internal hemorrhage during pregnancy. Sarah, age 22, 4 pregnancies. Her bones showed she survived the fire and lived to approximately age 57. Modern descendants were traced. 89 families across 15 states had genetic connections to the Magnolia site. Most had no idea their ancestors came from a breeding operation. Most had family stories about someone who escaped slavery during a fire, about a white girl who risked everything to break their chains. One descendant was Marcus Henderson, a federal judge in Philadelphia. His great-great-great-grandmother was one of the 7 women Rebecca saved. He gave a speech at the Magnolia Memorial dedication in 2017. I exist because a 17-year-old girl decided some things were worth dying for. My entire family exists because she chose to run into fire rather than let human beings burn in chains. We carry her name in our family. Rebecca. We tell her story to every generation. We make sure they understand that one person with courage can break systems that seem unbreakable. The memorial at Magnolia lists 73 names. The women who died in the breeding quarters, the 7 who survived, the 47 babies who were born there and sold. And at the center, a bronze plaque with Rebecca's words from her final interview in 1885. I did not do enough. I saved 7, but 14 died. I documented crimes, but the criminals were never punished. I exposed a system, but similar operations continued in secret for 20 more years until the war ended slavery completely. I do not want to be called a hero. I want to be called what I am, a witness who tried, who failed more than she succeeded, who lived with that failure every day for 43 years. If my story teaches anything, let it teach this. Witnessing is not enough. Documentation is not enough. You have to act even when action seems impossible, even when you know you will fail. Because sometimes saving 7 when you wanted to save 14 is still worth the cost. Sometimes lighting one fire that exposes the truth is worth burning everything you have built on lies. The memorial dedication ended with a moment of silence. 89 descendants standing together, some white, some black, all connected by genetics and history, and one girl's decision to choose humanity over family, to choose truth over comfort, to choose action over silence. If you visit the Magnolia site today, the ground where the breeding quarters stood is still bare. Nothing grows there, but surrounding it, planted by descendants, are 73 oak trees, one for each name on the memorial. They grow strong now, roots deep in soil that once held so much pain, branches reaching toward sky that once filled with smoke and screams and fire that somehow set people free.